Go. So, yesterday, we came back across the pond from Britain, okay, and we had an election. Republican sacrificial lamb is Wendell Willkie, okay. This is going to be another landslide. So Roosevelt elected 32, 6, 40, okay, and he will be reelected a fourth time in 44, okay. Now, do the Republicans have any chance here? Not really. Willkie's from Indiana, okay, and I think I have an electoral college map here that I can show you real quick. Okay, so you can see here which states Willkie won here in red. Okay, Kansas, the Great Plains here, Colorado, Michigan, Indiana, his home state, and then Vermont and Maine, which I believe were the only two states that the governor of Kansas, Alf Landon, got in 36. Remember that? Okay. So, yeah, it's another landslide. Now, from what I read about, Willkie criticized Roosevelt for not doing enough to get ready for the war. Okay? So, Roosevelt instituted the draft. Okay? And then, once we started building planes and the Navy and stuff like that, then Willkie criticized Roosevelt for being a warmonger, like he's going to get us into a war. And Willkie got wiped off the map. Okay? So, Roosevelt will get his term. Now, guys, we don't have uniforms for all these men. We don't have guns for all these men. Now, some of you that play video games know what the standard issue weapon that was given to our soldiers was called. The rifle that they were given? Huh? You guys don't play? Yeah. M1 Grand. The M1? Guys, so guys, we are going to literally make millions of those guns. The M1, okay? How many shots in an M1? 5. It's like, yeah, and then ding. Yeah. And then you got to put in a new clip. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you were lucky, you got a Thompson machine gun, which those were pretty nice, okay? But the M1, I mean, it's a good rifle. Just not a lot of capacity, okay? I spent about an hour yesterday over at Shield looking at guns. You know, they have cheap models. I mean, like 12-gauge shotgun, you could get a cheap one for $300. Or you could spend $3,000. And then I looked at the ARs. About 900 on the cheap end. So, I don't know. Home defense stuff, kind of looking at that. So, all right. So we talked about the draft. All right. Here's the facts. Here's the facts, guys. We are getting closer to war. Okay. And who needs help? Like, who's under attack and who really needs our help? Britain. Okay. So this is what we're going to talk about today a little bit. Is trying to help the British. Okay, I don't know what you guys are talking about there, but it's starting to be a nuisance. Thank you. Okay. All right. So, remember our Neutrality Act said we can't sell, you got to come bring your ships to our shores, pay cash, and then take it with you. Okay. Well, the British are under attack, so they're asking for more help. And one of the things Roosevelt does to get around some of our laws is he's going to sell supplies to private American businesses or individual Americans, and then those individual Americans and businesses will sell them to the British, which will keep us neutral. Okay, so he tries that, but one of the problems is when you start bringing these ships across the Atlantic, these things. These are German U-boats. Unterboten. 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 Which means what? Under boats, underwater boats. Okay. Das Boot. Okay. Yeah. There's 3 different types of Kriegsmarine U-boats here from 39 to 45. They're all good. And they're decimating shipping traffic or supply lines across the Atlantic. Okay, so Churchill wants the U.S. Navy to help escort ships across the Atlantic and protect them. And Roosevelt's like, no, man, if we use our Navy's going to get attacked and we're going to be drawn into the war. And we don't want that. So they come up with a deal. We're going to do a trade. Okay, we've got some old destroyers, some old ships. We're building new ones, guys. We're building a new Navy, building a new Air Force, okay? Although it's not called the Air Force. So what we're going to do is a trade. We're going to give them 50 World War I destroyers. In exchange, we're going to get to use 8 naval and air bases that are controlled by the British for 99-year leases, which would make it easier to defend the United States using these naval and air bases. Okay, they're all in the Western Hemisphere. So we cut a deal. Okay, these ships we're not using; they're just sitting on mothballs. And Churchill promises. He says, "Listen, if we get defeated by the Germans, we will destroy these World War I destroyers so they can't be used against you." Remember how Churchill had to sink part of the French fleet so it wouldn't be used against him? Okay, so Churchill knows all about that. So, as I started teaching this quite a few years ago, I started like, what happened to these ships? What were they like? So I found a good website. It's actually pretty cool, guys. It tells you what happened, shows you what these 8 bases are, where they are, and it shows you the fate of all 50 of these World War I destroyers in the war. Most of them will survive the war and be broken up, used as scrap metal after the war, okay? But some of them have some interesting histories, okay? Now, the fact that they're going to the British means they're going to change the name of all of them to British names, okay? And then some of these guys are going to be sent to the Russians. Because today in the notes, guys, we're going to get to the German invasion of the Soviet Union, which is what he said he was always going to do, to create living space, living room for the German people. When Germany attacks the Soviet Union becomes our ally. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So let me quote Churchill again. Churchill said this of Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union. He said, if Joseph Stalin were hell incarnate itself, I would find something nice to say about him in comparison to Adolf Hitler. Okay? In the view of the Americans and the British, Hitler is worse than Stalin. So, we're going to help Stalin, because Stalin's going to help us defeat Germany. You with me? Okay. So, pull up this website called the Destroyer Deal. So, here are the 8 bases. You can see here. Antigua, British Guiana, Jamaica, St. Lucia, Bermuda, Newfoundland, which is in Canada, and Trinidad. The rest of these are kind of in the Caribbean. Okay, the British have a lot of islands down there. Okay, so we'll be able to use those for 99 years. That's the deal. And we're going to give them 50 of these. Here. 50 of these. They're good looking ships, okay? So they're going to change the name of them and put them into use to help escort supplies across the Atlantic and do other things. So, like the Aaron Ward was renamed the Castleton. It survived the war, was broken up in 1947. This one here, probably the most famous of them, the Buchanan, was renamed the Campbellton Town. They filled this one with explosives and used it as kind of a suicide mission to send it into a dock that the Germans were using in France, and blew up the dock, rendering it useless for the Germans. Okay, but if you dig deeper into some of these, you'll notice, oops, like this one here. The Roxborough was given to Russia, renamed the Zoltyski, returned to Britain in 1949, broken up in 52. Here's another one. The Churchill was given to Russia, named the Delegny, and it was sunk by U-boat 286. Okay, so all the U-boats had numbers. Okay, the Bath, the Hopewell, renamed the Bath, sunk by U-boat 204 in August 19th, 1941. Okay, some of these struck mines. Several of them were sunk by U-boats here, U-101, U-574, and so forth. Okay, so that's kind of a cool website. So on the test, I ask you, the United States exchanged 50 World War I destroyers for the use of 8 naval and air bases from the British. Is that a true statement? That's a true statement. Okay. Good? All right. So, guys, I will detail a lot more on submarine warfare when we get to the next module, because we're going to have what's called the Battle of the Atlantic once the United States gets in this war. But let me just tell you this. In all of World War II, for over about a 4-year period, there were 4,600 ships sunk in the Atlantic Ocean. 4,600. So over a 4-year span, you think about how many that is a month, how many that is a week, on average, how many that is a day. Okay? These were dropping like flies. Okay? If you add World War I into the numbers here of ships lost in the Atlantic, it goes close upwards of 10,000 ships sunk between those 2 world wars in the Atlantic. Okay? The Atlantic is littered with sunk ships. Okay? And quite a few U-boats as well that we'll get. Okay. All right. So, next slide. Now, helping British. So we gave them some destroyers. Okay. Now, the Lend-Lease Act. Now, this is what's in every textbook. This is what people always talk about is the Lend-Lease Act. Okay. Now, remember during World War I, we loaned like $9 billion of stuff to the Allies. Did they pay us back? Remember the war debts? No, Finland paid us back. That was it. Nobody paid us back. Now, the Lend-Lease is going to help the British. But you know who else is going to help? Once the Russians are in, Lend-Lease is going to help the Russians. And it's also going to help the Chinese. Once we get into the war, we're going to help the Chinese as well. Okay, so we are expecting to be paid back. Are we going to get paid back? Yeah. What about the money we're sending to Ukraine? They going to pay us back? I don't think so. Especially if they don't win. Now, if they win, maybe they give us some good oil concessions, maybe some good deals on fertilizer. They make a lot of fertilizer there. Maybe on food, although we have enough of our own. Okay. But Ukraine is kind of the breadbasket of Russia. I mean, that's where they grow a lot of crops. Okay. Hard to do when you're in the middle of a war. So, before long, you're going to see U.S. merchant ships delivering supplies to Britain. Now, guys, if you look at these 2 pictures at the bottom, this is a really good picture of a convoy. Okay? And in this one, you can see a little barrage balloon, right? Barrage balloons from yesterday. Okay? The idea was if you took all the ships over across together, like a bunch of 50 or 100, you could send destroyers and cruisers around the outside of this convoy as it moves across the Atlantic. You put your most precious cargo in the center of the convoy to try and protect it. Now, at this point, guys, probably the most precious cargo, I would say, is probably oil, fuel, okay, that the British really need. Okay? Wouldn't you say, Mikey? That's probably the most important supply at this point. Now, later on, Once we get in this war, you know who we're going to be sending across in these convoys? Troops. And that becomes our most precious cargo. And if these U-boats are sinking ships like crazy, that means our boys are going to the bottom of the Atlantic, and we can't have that. So we're going to have to win that war in the Atlantic. We got to find a way, okay? Now, Churchill is going to brave the Atlantic to meet with Roosevelt in what's called the Atlantic Charter. Now, guys, if you look at the map, it's dangerous to cross the Atlantic. Churchill's going to leave London and go north up to Newfoundland. And this is a secret meeting up in Canada. So the American people don't know about this meeting. The British people don't know about this meeting. The media is not told about this meeting. It's all secret, okay? And it becomes known as the Atlantic Charter. This is in mid-1941. And guys, we are getting closer and closer to war here. It is decided at this meeting between Churchill and Roosevelt that when, not if, that when the United States gets in this war, we will focus on Europe first and the Pacific second, the Japanese. Okay? So that they can start laying some groundwork, some plans, and so forth if they settle on that idea. Okay, and that's what they're going to do at this meeting. As you can see in a lot of photographs here with Roosevelt during World War II, with other world leaders, he'll be in meeting with other world leaders a lot. They'll be sitting, of course. Roosevelt can't walk. Yes? Okay. So, there you have it. All right. So, next. American ships going to start helping. Americans are going to start dying. So Roosevelt starts doing some really smart stuff here. Okay. First of all, he extends the zone necessary to defense of the United States. Now, any of you guys fish? You like fishing? Yeah. If you're going to go fishing, you want to go where the fish are. Yes? You know where the fish hang out, right? Where do the bass hang out? Where are the bass? You like bass? I like bass fishing. And then around an object or maybe in some grassy areas along the bank, that sort of thing. Okay? That's sort of cast into there. Okay? If you're a German U-boat and you're going fishing, you're going hunting, you're going to go where the ships are. Well, if you know where the ports are, you hang out over here near the ports and you got plenty of fish. Okay? So we said, if you come in here with your U-boats, we're going to sink you. Okay? So extending the zone necessary to defense. Now, if you can see this map up here, guys, these are all shipping losses, these dots. Okay? The green ones are submarines that were sunk. Okay? Or German warship and U-boat losses. Okay? Now, guys, they even brought their submarines into the Gulf of Mexico. The Germans did. They were all up and down our coast. Right? Now, then Roosevelt very smartly sends troops to occupy ports in Greenland and Iceland. If you look at this, guys, if the Germans ever wanted to invade the Western Hemisphere, Iceland and Greenland, guys, would be like really good refueling points. So we take the initiative and we occupy these ports before the Germans came. That's really smart, okay? Now, I'm not really sure how the Icelanders and Greenlanders felt about that, but we're doing it for self-preservation, okay? Now, the next two things up there, B and C. Congress is going to authorize the seizure of 92 ships in our harbors that are controlled by Germany and Italy. Guys, this could be things like Volkswagen, you know, like German companies or Ferrari, Italian companies. You're not bringing those ships back to your countries. They're staying here. We're not going to let you use the goods in those ships against us. And then on June 14th, we freeze all German and Italian assets in the United States. This in and of itself could be seen as an act of war. Now, what that means, we're not going to steal the money. we're just not going to give them access to it. Money that you made in the United States is not going to be used against us. We did the same thing after 9/11. There were a bunch of Islamic charities in the United States that were sending money to the Middle East. Frozen. We did the same thing in 1979 to Iran when they took our hostages. Okay, and you might have heard it in the news in the last couple of weeks that President Biden unfroze $6 billion to Iran. That's their money. He's giving them access to it. And what does Iran spend their money on? Spend their money funding groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. Okay, why is Biden doing this? Why did Obama do it? Billions of dollars, like $82 billion. Obama gave back to him. Okay. So, again, inching closer and closer to war. Now, while we're in June 1941, here we go. What Hitler said he was always going to do. Invade Russia. Now, this is called Operation Barbarossa. You can't really blame Hitler for being kind of overconfident here. What he was able to do with Poland and then Western Europe in a matter of weeks is impressive. Blitzkrieg, he felt, could conquer anything. Now, a student of history would know that there were others that tried to conquer Russia. Like 113 years prior to this. You guys see the movie trailer for this? Seen the movie trailer? Who was it? Napoleon. Napoleon tried to invade Russia. Okay, and they got a new movie coming out. Ridley Scott's the director. He directed things like Black Hawk Down and Gladiator. So I'm thinking, dude, this is going to be a good flick. Joaquin Phoenix plays Napoleon, who's a really good actor. Okay, he's intense. Okay, he's the Joker, right? Yeah. Okay, now he's playing the little short man. Napoleon, little man. What do you call it? Little man disease or little man huh? Syndrome. Little man syndrome. Right. Yeah. Napoleon. I'm excited about this. I think it's coming out around Christmas. Hollywood just doesn't really do that many good films anymore. So when you get something like this, I get kind of fired up, like Dunkirk. Okay? Now, all right, so his major blunder. All right, so what happens? Now remember, Germany's invading on June 22nd. They're in Poland. Remember, Russia controls half of Poland. So he's going to come out from here. The capital is Moscow. Now, this map's actually better than that map because this is the Soviet Union. That's Russia today. Okay? Now, here's the thing. Look at Moscow, the capital. Now, if you're going to want to defeat a country, you want to take its capital, seat of government. Now, watch my fingers. I go across latitudinally here. Look at how far north Moscow is. See that? Now, it's June. If you're going to go to Alaska, the best 2 months to go to Alaska, probably June and July. Okay? It's like moderate weather. Okay? So you're up here, and it's June, July, August, September. Now, we had some cool weather in September. We had some hot weather as well. Okay? And then October. Remember Halloween 2 days ago? How freaking cold it was? Here? Now, we're way down here. We're down here. What do you think the weather was like earlier this week in Canada? In northern Canada or mid-Canada. It's freaking cold. German troops will leave Germany or Poland in summer uniform. And they're headed out to Moscow. And they will have initial success because Blitzkrieg is very powerful. But there's something about the motherland. Okay? Now, in Wichita, guys, we get the jet stream. If you watch the weather, you'll see the jet stream always comes through here. The wind's always blowing out of the south or the north. Very rarely do we get westerly winds or easterly winds. It's always north or south. Okay? Trust me, I'm a baseball coach. It's blowing out to left. It's blowing in from left. Okay? When it's blowing out to left, softball girls need to watch out because we're hitting bombs out there, okay, over the fence. All right? When it's blowing in, you're not hitting anything very far at all. Hit the ball on the ground, line drives, hit the ball out of the air. Because what are fly balls? Fly balls are outs. Okay? Even kids in Southeast can catch fly balls. Usually. Okay. Now.
So it's north wind that's over the fence or south wind?
No, south wind. Yeah. And I tell you what, if you're a pitcher in Kansas, like pitching high school, you pitch in college, it's a bad state to be a pitcher. It's usually the wind's blowing out of the south every day. It's a launching pad. My son was a college pitcher. He gave up a lot. They all do. Okay, so the wind's coming out of the north or south. We're in the jet stream. Well, the jet stream in Europe, guys, goes through here, this way, right into here. Okay, now, there's one city in America that is not in the mountains, that is notorious for a lot of snow. Texas, not a city. They will get 22, 28 inches. It's normal. Where am I talking? They get a lot of snow. But no, different. No. Minnesota gets a lot of snow. Where in New York? There's a football team there. Buffalo. You guys hear about Buffalo's snow? It's crazy, guys. So look where Buffalo is. Buffalo is in western New York. Right on Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Lake Huron, Superior, Michigan, all this moisture, the Great Lakes goes up into the air and just dumps on Buffalo every year. Like their budget for snow plowing is 100 times more than ours. Okay? Russia has the Norwegian Sea, the Barents Sea effect. It's cold. Okay, like if you're in Germany, which is not that far south, they get like Seattle. It never really gets that cold in Seattle, even though it's that far north. It's because of the warmth coming off the Atlantic, the Gulf Stream. You understand? This is freaking Arctic air, and it's cold. It is so cold in Russia. You're supposed to say, how cold was it? It was so cold in Russia. No. You, all of you are supposed to say, how cold was it? It was so cold in Russia that the German tank treads froze to the ground. It was so cold in Russia that the German tanks, which used diesel fuel, the tanks froze. You could not start them. It was so cold in Russia that when you got shot, when you started bleeding out, as soon as the blood hit the air, it froze. The Germans are having to resupply all the way from Poland because as the Russians retreat, they use what's called the scorched earth practice. where they destroy anything the German army can use as it's coming across Russia. They poison drinking water sources. They destroy shelter. They destroy food, everything. Nothing, the Germans will have nothing they can use. It's a barren, scorched earth. The part that really stinks, though, guys, is that's where most of the Russian people live. So you are going to see millions of Russians starve to death or freeze to death because of the scorched earth practice. But Russia has its back up against the wall. Okay? So Stalin, who doesn't really care about his people, okay, he's like, we're going to do whatever it takes to protect Mother Russia. Okay? Now, one of the smart things Stalin did was he moved his manufacturing of his tanks and aircraft out here beyond the Ural Mountains. The Luftwaffe did not have the fuel capacity to go out here and attack their industry out here. It's really smart, okay? So, as they move into Russia, guys, they are going to get within 15 miles of Moscow, okay, by December. But then, guys, it just sets in. We're talking about 30 degrees below zero. Now, if you ever go to Minnesota, okay, or go to Canada, you'll notice if you stay in a hotel or you're in a parking lot in northern Canada, there's a plug-in for your vehicle to keep your engine warm, because otherwise it will freeze. If you leave your engine off for 3 or 4 hours in the winter in Minnesota, you won't be able to start your car. It'll freeze up. Diesel engines are even worse. Okay, like you can't even turn your car off. You got to keep it running. That's like the German tanks. They had to keep them running. And then they're going to run low on fuel. Okay, and so they're going to have to stop. The Germans are going to have to stop for the winter. The Russians are going to get ready to counterattack in the spring of 42. The fighting there in Russia will last about 2 years. And it will be some of the worst fighting of the entire war. Okay, like, so if you came here from another galaxy and you asked, hey, I heard about this World War II you guys had. What you would teach them is about this. Now, this is an American history class. So we're going to talk about Pearl Harbor. We're going to talk about D-Day. We're going to talk about the Battle of the Bulge, the big things that the Americans did. But this is where the war really takes place. More people will fight here. More people will die here than in any other part of the war in Russia. Okay? And the Russians, man, if you study Russian history, they've had it tough. They're tough people. Okay? They like to drink a lot, but they're tough. They're hard. They're hard people. And so they're ready for this. And the Germans are not. Okay? So this is it's gonna embrace them. The motherland is going to embrace them and freeze them. Like, so if you got guard duty, okay, usually it's for an hour or two. No, man, it goes from 30 minutes to 15 minutes. You can't stay outside longer than 15 minutes. You're gonna freeze to death. That's how cold it is. You guys know, like when we get really cold weather here, you know, with the wind chill and all that, okay? And then you just add all the snow to it, okay? This is brutal on the Germans, okay? The Russians are ready. So as this says, they're successful early, but the winter will prevail, okay? 15 miles from Moscow, soldiers froze, tank oil froze, Germans would have to wait for warmer weather. At that time, the Russians are ready to counterattack. Germans still have air superiority, okay? Which is a problem for the Russians. So they're going to bring the enemy in close. They're going to let the Germans come into their cities. They're going to fight them house to house, room to room, street to street, okay? That way the Germans can't use their air superiority. If you got German and Russian troops intermingled, You can't start dropping bombs in the middle of it. You're going to kill your own people. Does that make sense? It's called hugging the enemy, right? Now, I'm going to show you a movie clip here in a few minutes, guys. If you go further east, okay, and south, there's a city on the Volga River down here called Stalingrad. It bears the name of the leader. Do you think Stalin wants to lose Stalingrad to Hitler? Heck no. Do you think Hitler really wants to take Stalingrad? Oh, yeah. So both are going to send everything they got to Stalingrad. Okay? And it, guys, this is one of the worst battles in human history. Okay? I mean, you think about worst battles in human history, you think about things like Gettysburg, Chancellorsville in the Civil War. I mean, we're just tens of thousands of people died within hours. Okay? This war in Stalingrad is going to be brutal. Now, about 20 years ago, I read a book. It was called War of the Rats. And it was about Russian and German snipers in the Battle of Stalingrad. It's a great book, okay, based on a true story. And then about 10 years after I read that book, I saw a movie trailer. And I'm like, that's from the book I read, okay? And sure enough, it was. They changed the name of the movie from the book to Enemy at the Gates. You guys seen this movie, Enemy at the Gates? Okay, it's outstanding. I'm going to show you about a 10-minute clip here, and you're going to want to watch the rest of the movie. Now, ladies, Jude Law. You know Jude Law? British actor, blue eyes, nice jaw, blonde hair. Huh? He was who?
He was X-Men.
Oh, X-Men. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know about X. I don't know. I saw that a long time ago. Is that the one Silver Surfer, X-Men? Silver Surfer? I don't know. Okay. All right. So, Battle of Stalingrad. Okay. I have to give you a little bit of a warning. This is very graphic. You may hang out in the hallway if you don't want to watch this. That's completely fine, and I'm going to turn this off. Okay. We got about 12 minutes. Okay. I got it ready to go. Queued up, ready to go. No. You turned off? I didn't turn you off. You better pop up where I left it. Okay. This is Vasily Zaitsev. Okay. He's a farm boy from the Ural Mountains. His grandpa taught him how to shoot. He was a hunt. They would hunt. Okay. So all these guys are getting drafted into the Russian military. They put them on these trains and they lock them in the cars. So there's no deserters. Okay. And they're taking them to Stalingrad. They got no idea what they're about to walk into. Okay. Hang on.
Where the fate of the world is being decided.
This is a good map here. So. Okay.
The German Third Reich is at the height of its power. Hitler's armies are charging from the heart of the Soviet Union towards the oil fields.